You're listening to the Fierce Fatty Podcast, episode 178, Coming to Terms with an Anti-Fat World. Listener questions. I'm your host, Vinnie Wellsby. Let's do it.
Perfect.
Welcome back to the show, Fierce Fatties and Fat Allies. So glad to have you here. I decided to cut this episode into two because it got to be so long. So this is part two of listener questions. So I guess I'll get right into the questions. If you enjoy the show, donate on Ko-fi. K-O-F-I, link in the show notes. Link to everything that I'm talking about will be in the show notes for 177 and 178. So if you get confused, then they'll just be there, okay? Yeah. Okay, let's do it. Next question is, do you have any advice for finding a primary care provider or an OBGYN that won't attribute all my problems to fatness? Maria. Okay, so if you're looking for an OBGYN in regards to fertility, we've got Nicola Salmon, Fat Positive Fertility. She has a book, she's got different things. So if that's a part of what you're looking for, totally might not be, but there might be help there. Well, not might be, there's 100% help there. And she probably has community and resources. But we do have lots of different lists of weight-neutral healthcare providers in the US. Unfortunately, it's very US-centric. So there's links to, like, you know, Mary Lambert, the singer. She's got a whole spreadsheet of providers that's been contributed to by different people. We've got one from Christy Harrison. We've got one called Fat Friendly Doctors. We've got another one, Fat Friendly Healthcare Providers. We've got an article from self.com, how to find a fat friendly doctor. But let me tell you how I do it, is any healthcare need that I have. For example, yesterday I had my ingrown toenail removed. If anyone's thinking about if anyone has chronic ingrown toenail, go do this procedure, because I don't know, do what you want, but for me, the thought of it was worse than the actual thing by miles. And I'm not really that squeamish, but I went to to get a pedicure, and there was a new person. They said, it's okay for a new person to do a trainee to do your feet. And I said, yeah, no problem. And she cut down into my nail, and immediately someone ran over and was like, no, don't do that, don't do that. And I was like, I know, well, that's going to turn into, I mean, you know, it's an accident, whatever. So for the last 18 months, I've been dealing with chronic ingrown toenail on that foot. And so eventually I looked in, there's a Fat Club Vancouver Facebook group. Fat Club Vancouver, just searched podiatrist. Actually, podiatrist. And we had some recommendations. Now, I'm lucky, I live in Vancouver. I live in Canada. So Canada, more likely to find people. Vancouver, big city, more likely to find people. So I go by personal recommendations. So you might not have a fat group in your location. You might not be in a city. You might be in some location that's, you know, there's only one person. Are there any groups, Facebook groups, you know, like any Facebook group that's in your location that you can ask a question? Hey, does anyone have any experience with, and then put thanks, I don't need any weight loss advice. You might not get anything. So some people, they might have choices, might have to be found someone with lots of all these resources that we have. Some you might not, depending where you are. You can there's some cards called Don't Weigh Me cards, and they are free. There's a link in the show notes, Don't Weigh Me cards. And so, it says, it's like a business card, and it says, please don't weigh me unless it's really medically necessary. You can email them beforehand or call them or whatever. I don't know what I said, whatever, carrier pigeon, mail, whatever, and say, hey, I don't want my weight discussed. You can take someone with you to act as an advocate so that they can say, hey, we're not going to be talking about weight. You can decide that that's not going to work for you. And you might just smile and nod when they say, did you know that you're fat? Have you ever considered weight loss? And so you might be able to find something. If you're in the US, you probably have a better chance of finding people. And even if people are not expressly saying that they're fat positive, they might not mention weight. So, and if that's the case, tell people. Tell someone who has one of these lists. And yeah, read that article, How to Find a Fat-Friendly Doctor. So, next question. Hello, I do have a question. I hope it isn't offensive. I'll try to word it as kindly as possible. I'm wondering, by the way, it's not really offensive. I'm wondering what you think about the supposed correlation between health and beauty. In other words, a person must be healthy to be beautiful. Is this true in any sense? This is one justification I have seen used at times to claim that fat people are unattractive. People will cite biology as an explanation. We live in a world that is obsessed with physical appearance and ties it to our worth as human beings, so that message can cause a lot of pain if one is deemed to be ugly. Sorry if it's weird, and I hope I worded it clearly. Thank you for taking the time to read if you got this far. Yeah, so in response to this, when someone says, I'm not attracted to fat people because they're unhealthy and that is a part of my biology, because I'm a man, I'm an alpha man. Oh, it's just... It's giving me, what is it, Jordan Peterson and what's that other dickhead that's in jail at the moment? Can't remember his name anyway. Dickhead. Yeah, it makes me think, what's health got to do? I got to do with it. What's health got to do? Who you want to have sex with? Because you cannot look at a fat person and see their health status. Like, I don't know if these people have like these magical goggles that it's like, okay, let's do an X-ray and an MRI and test the blood and la 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 la, and they're like, analysis results come back and it turns out that first fat person is unhealthy. They don't know. And a thin person, like someone who's straight size, how can they know what their health status is? I think what people are confusing for health is actually bias. Bias that's based in anti-black racism, ableism, colonialism, etc. Also, if they want someone who is physically fit, biology, because of biology, well, fat people can be that too, right? Fat people are Olympians, fat people are athletes, fat people are world record breakers. But if you were to ask that same fat phobe who would cite biology, oh, well, then is that fat athlete attractive? They'd come up with some other excuse outside of health. Well, I'm just attracted to. It's bullshit. It's just bias masked as biology, really. I was watching this British boxer. He's called the Gypsy King. I think he's probably quite problematic, but I watched this documentary about him. And if you saw his body type, you'd be like, no, that is not a fit person. If you saw his body type and you're a fat phobe, you would not think twice. You'd just be like, oh, he's a tall person. But he's like undefeated world champion boxer, something, blah, 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 best in the world ever, la, la, la. And I find it's funny because a lot of his opponents are all like really buff people, and he's just not. I wouldn't say he's fat. I mean, like, he's obviously a heavy person because he's tall, and even if he was fat. But if you think about all like the world's strongest men, they have huge, big tummies, right? Weightlifters and javelin throwers, and they're the best at what they're doing. But no, it's not that type of fit that I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone who's like a gymnast, so it's not fitness, it's not biology. It's, what is that thing called? Anti-fat bias. Okay, so next question. Hey, Vinny. Hopefully this isn't redundant. This is the last question, by the way. Hopefully this isn't a redundant question. Also a really good question. Hopefully this isn't a redundant question. Sorry. But something I hear from a lot of clients is the desire to lose weight. not from an aesthetic point of view anymore, but to physically fit into the world. I have one client in particular who's recently expressed sadness of not being able to ride her sister's Peloton because of the weight limit, not going to a Broadway show because of the seat size, having difficulty finding clothing, she's quite tall, etc. Of course, I hear concerns like this from many clients, but these are just some recent examples that stick out. I guess the question would be how to deal with, cope with, grieve, not fitting into the world physically. Not sure there's really a solution, but I've heard the concerns many times, and it would be awesome to have an episode about it. Sorry if this is redundant and you've already had similar episode out, Lauren. So I don't think I've had an episode specifically about this, but then again, we're up to 177. Listen, I can't remember the episodes that I've done 2 weeks ago. So unless the topic is weight loss surgery, apart from that, I'm like, do I have an episode? Because I have like 4 on weight loss surgery. So it's like, it's in my brain now. But, 177 episodes, I'm like, fuck, what is it that I'm talking about? And if I can't remember, sure as shit, you don't remember because, you're not the one doing the research around it and all that. So if I can't remember, you can't remember. So therefore, it's good to talk about these things all the time anyway. So even if I have had an episode about something, I'm happy to redo things because there might be new things that have come out, and also we forget, right? So to answer this question, this is so hard. And the question being, what do we do? How do we cope or deal with not fitting into the world physically? So this is hard because life is harder being fat. There's no doubt about that. Also, for me, life is awesome being fat in lots of ways, and also harder being fat in lots of ways. But thing is, what a lot of fat people hear is, just love yourself, just love your body and everything will be great. And while that could be true, the reality is that it can be very, very difficult. And depending on your level of privilege, if you have other historically marginalized identities, then that experience is going to be different and potentially more difficult. And so we don't want to deny that very real reality. For me, the shift was life being hard because I am bad, my body is bad and I need to lose weight, versus society is fucked up. And that shifting of the blame was a crucial step. And I did an episode 5 episodes ago, episode 172, The Science of Protecting Ourselves from Anti-Fat Bias. So that episode looked at a study that showed that those who are in a marginalized group, this study specifically about fat identity, if they were outside of that in group, as in, I'm fat and I hate being fat and fat is the worst thing that's ever in the world, versus, okay, well, I think I can maybe learn about fat liberation and maybe I'll go to some fat clothing stores and maybe I'll join some Facebook groups and maybe I'll learn how to live in a fat body without shame and stigma and internalizing that stuff, because you're never going to be away from shame and stigma, right? And so those who were identified with that in-group of fat, so people who were like, I'm fat and fuck it, I don't care what you think, or even I'm fat and I tolerate my existence. So it doesn't even have to, you don't have to even be celebratory. You can be tolerating your fat identity, versus those who are actively trying to distance themselves and get away from that fat group, had different experiences of anti-fat bias. One internalized it more than the other, and the one who's not in the in-group of fat are the ones who internalized it more. So what I find with a lot of clients that I do one-on-one work with is a lot of them are in that out group, right? They've been working to get away from fatness. Maybe they've started intuitive eating and they've gained weight, and now they went from a straight-sized person to a fat person. They are not in that in-group of fat people. Like, they do not want to be fat, or they're really struggling to deal with it, or they're new to fat acceptance, fat liberation, and haven't got in the in-group yet. So the desire to lose weight is normal. If someone was like, I feel bad, I want to lose weight. And I'm like, how many people in the world don't want to lose weight? You're a weirdo, like someone like me who says, I'm happy to be fat. Really, we're a weirdo, because most people do want to lose weight because that's what society tells us to do. To people who are in probably feminine or maybe non-binary bodies, and men a lot of times being told either to lose weight or become more muscly. So what I want people to know is it's normal to want to lose weight, and also you have the body autonomy to decide what is best for you. So I've made this little graph, and I'm going to chart rather, and I'm going to make it into an Instagram post, which is talking about like what could happen if we attempt weight loss and what could happen if we decide to stay the same size. And so why I'm talking about that is perhaps people are feeling a little bit helpless and frustrated and hopeless when they're like, well, the world is shit. And so, I don't want to lose weight because of what I look like, but because I want to access privilege, which is absolutely fine and understandable. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about attempting weight loss to access privilege and what that could look like and the benefits of that. And also talking about deciding to stay the same size or not do anything. And, you might stay the same size, put on weight, lose weight, whatever, but not attempt weight loss. So if you attempt weight loss, you might have temporary relief from anti-fat bias. So I would ask you, like, if you're struggling with this, maybe you write this down for yourself. You make a little chart of attempt weight loss, don't attempt weight loss. And you will be able to answer this much better. In the past, has attempting weight loss caused you to become smaller temporarily? So write that down. So, or maybe, I don't know, like, what has your experience been? So temporarily relief from anti-fat bias. Okay. So temporary relief from anti-fat bias. So if you don't attempt weight loss, there's no relief from your body size, from anti-fat bias, from having a smaller body. You can get relief from anti-fat bias in other ways, but not because your body is more socially acceptable. So if you attempt weight loss, you might be sad and frustrated when you gain the weight back. If you don't attempt weight loss, you don't have to deal with regaining weight after losing it. If you attempt weight loss, there's a risk of engaging in disordered eating. Perhaps you've seen that in yourself before. And if you don't attempt weight loss, you can continue to practice intuitive eating. If you attempt weight loss, you're able to access the world with greater ease, temporarily probably. So you'll be able to buy clothes and fit into chairs and access healthcare. So that's a benefit, right? If you don't attempt weight loss, you have to learn how to deal with a world that is anti-fat. And that's difficult. But on the other hand, the attempting weight loss, you might have to learn how to deal with a world that's anti-fat anyway when you inevitably gain weight back. If you attempt weight loss, you might be able to access life-saving or changing surgery treatments like IVF treatments, gender-affirming surgery, etc., knee replacements. And if you don't attempt weight loss, you have to fight to find a healthcare provider who will still operate on you at your current size. And this is harmful and stressful. If you attempt weight loss, there's more options for people who would date you. But you might be scared that they'll leave you when you gain weight. If you don't attempt weight loss, you might be frustrated with fewer options and experience stigma, but you might know that your size is not an issue for new partners because they're dating you and you have the current body that you have. You might talk about these things with partners and say, listen, I'm fat positive. If you attempt weight loss, you might have to engage in life-threatening and life-changing means to lose weight, like surgery or injections. And if you don't attempt weight loss, you don't have to risk your well-being to become probably temporarily smaller. So you see how there's no like, this decision is really deeply, deeply complicated. I don't, for me, want to engage in attempted weight loss. For me, I know my history, which is eating disorders. I know the science, which is that if I do, I will probably be causing physical harm, mental harm to myself. And I will also then be experiencing harm when the weight comes back on. But also, I am not in need or seeking life-saving, life-affirming, life-changing treatment that I cannot access at my current size. I have found a way that it is tolerable to live in this society in my current body size with all of the privileges I have. I am white. I am British. I'm middle-aged. I am working class. I am non-disabled. I have access to therapy, so I have all of these privileges that someone else might not have access to. And so for someone else who lives next door to me, they might decide that attempting weight loss is the best thing for them because it is not tenable to live in a world that is so deeply anti-fat, or because they need access to healthcare and they can't get that at their current weight. And all of that is fucked up, right? But someone said on the internet, I can't remember what it was, like, what is your grift? What is your grift? What is it that you're doing in order to survive? And so the point of the person's video was like, women who use their sexuality to get ahead in the world. She said, that's their grift. My grift is to choose to not engage with using my sexuality to entice men. My grift is something else. My grift is doing this, And so for me, my grift is literally working in this field, right? That's my grift. My grift is surviving by being so deeply in fat liberation that I can't go down that rabbit hole of despair. And I don't feel that despair, right? And so whatever it is that you decide to do, it's your choice, right? So that feeling of autonomy is helpful for me. So spelling it out, if life is so untenable for me as a fat person, then I can try and pursue relief, albeit most likely temporarily. Or you can write out this list and be like, actually I've decided, weighing the pros and cons, that I'm just going to keep going with this and see what happens. Also, I hear from people who are new to fat liberation and literally don't know of all the resources out there. Like someone who's always shopped in a straight size store and they will think that there is no store that carries fat clothes and that's not fashionable. They might be like, oh yeah, I know that there's a store in that local mall called Maureen's and it's only clothes for, 70-year-old people and above, and it's not really my thing. And so they might be catastrophizing, saying, there's no way that I can live if I can't get, clothes that fit me, or if I can't access this and that, or if I can't go on a Peloton, or if I can't go to a Broadway show. What's the point in living? And as a fat person, I need to become thin. So that person might not know the resources that fat liberationists have created. And there's lots. And it comes with yes and. So yes, you're probably, as a fat person, not going to be able to walk into 99% of the stores and try on a piece of clothing. But yes, and there's also hundreds of stores online. Like, for example, in that size diversity resource guide, I had to stop tracking all of the stores that carried plus size. But here's another caveat. Up to what point? If you're a size 28 or below, then you'll be fine. Or, when I say fine, you'll find stuff. It's definitely not as, accessible, and it'd be more expensive. And when I say fine, it's a kind of, you'll survive. But if you were a poor person and also above a size 28, then it becomes really difficult. So then again, that's where we go back to, well, what are we going to do? Are we going to attempt weight loss? Are we going to attempt to access the world and find ways to make it easier for ourselves? So holding the unfair, and so with the clothing example, so one, it's not fair that there aren't in-person stores, and two, also there may be options that I am not aware of. So another thing I find helpful is talking about privilege. It can be when people are new to identifying with fat. So someone could be fat all their life, but not identify as fat in the liberatory way. So if they're new to identifying as fat, they might not realize the level of privilege that they have. And when they realize how deeply privileged they are, it can help them realize that they can live and thrive as a fat person. And so I will show people the fat spectrum from Ash at the Fat Lip. So you can just Google fat spectrum. Ash from the Fat Lip created a post that's been around the internet for years. And so I talk about myself. I'll say, hey, listen, I am a medium fat person. And so because I'm a medium fat person, this is how it's difficult for me. And also this is how life is easier for me versus if I was a bigger fat person. And also I have white skin and I'm non-disabled, etc., etc., etc. And then asking, like, how does that make them feel about where they fit on the fat spectrum, if they even do? And this might be difficult, like if you're a practitioner and you're in a straight size body, like this might be, if you're like, hey, I'm size 2, and that, a lot of clients might be like, well, fuck you. So you might say, hey, something that I know can be helpful is to understand our levels of marginalization and our levels of privilege, and to understand kind of like where we fit in the world. And one of the resources is having a look at the fat spectrum. Is anything coming up for you? Another thing, are the fears that they have based in anti-fat bias? Like, they could be really sad about not being thin because they think they'll never be loved, or will die young, or will not be able to keep up with their kids and they'll be a bad parent. So what things are based in reality and what things are fears based in bias? If they're based in reality, can we find solutions? So a Broadway show. So Broadway show, can you ask for the accessible seating? A lot of theatres will have wheelchair seating, and so it would be appropriate for a fat person to ask for that seating. Something like flying in a plane, ask for a seatbelt extender, or join the group Flying While Fat on Facebook and get loads of tips from there about what airlines to fly with and not to fly with. So for example, when I went to Ireland, I flew with American Airlines, which I didn't know are absolute dog shit for size. They've got some of the smallest seats in the world. I mean, the seats between airlines aren't that dramatically different. They're all tiny. I think American Airlines is 16 inches wide a seat, and then other airlines would be 17 or 18, so they're all shit basically. But also I was sat in one of the seats where they don't have movable armrests, and also they have metal dividers because it's at some front seat anyway. And so I had to ask for a seatbelt extender. So if I was in my fatness is really awful stage, that would be devastating for me. But I just was like, oh, I'm so pleased that I know that resource is available to me. I'm so pleased I don't feel shame. I'm so pleased that I'm not like putting my safety at risk by pretending that it's buckled and putting my coat over myself and being like, oh my God, I hope I don't die. Anyway, so keeping up with the kids as an example. So do you need to match a child's energy level 24/7 to be a good parent? Are disabled parents not good parents? Is it true that you can engage with your kids physically if you are fat? Will losing weight temporarily help with being a good parent, or could it be harmful to your kids, them seeing you engage in diet culture? Is having a parent who models body acceptance and intuitive eating more helpful, or equally as helpful as a parent who diets but can run for an hour? So sometimes people's beliefs can be based in fear and bias. Sometimes they can be based in reality. And if they're based in reality, what can we do to mitigate that? And in some cases, there's nothing that we can do. In some cases, you might go to a Broadway show or an off-Broadway show and they say, sorry, we've already filled the accessible seating, or there is no accessible seating, or you don't feel comfortable to ask for the accessible seating, or you couldn't even get to the Broadway show because there is no airline that carries someone of your size, even if you bought the first class plane ticket, you know? And so in those situations, what can we do to support our mental health in those situations, right? And none of this to diminish the harm that living in a fatphobic world causes, but just to say that there's hope. Life for me as a fat person is harder in ways that if I was thin, but I would not change it. I hope I'm fat forever. I feel like I am in this cool club. I like being fat. I feel like I have access to something, the fat community, that not everyone has. And that is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Like just last week, I went to Nettle's Tail is a swimsuit company in Vancouver, and they carry 4X to extra small. And they threw a pool party. And I went with another fat person who was on the internet in Vancouver, and we became friends from being fat people in Vancouver. And then almost everyone at the pool party was fat, and we ate food and had ice lollipops and was in the water and was like, oh, where'd you get your swimsuit from? And that fat community was so fucking joyful. And the thin people who were there, we knew that they were fat positive because they were talking about fat liberation. Like, how cool is that? And that's that study that I was talking about from the episode. That's that study about being in the in-group. So, I want to say, there's hope, and hopefully things will get better. I mean, they have for me, and they have for a lot of people that I talk to, and also it's cool to, it's fine if you want to sit in the suck, right? Because it's not fair. It is not fair that fat people die because of fat hate. If you want some pepping up, there's a Instagram post. It's going to link in the show notes, which is 28 benefits of being fat, including, well, the first one, being part of the fat community. Love it. Easy to find in a crowd. Belly shelf, a snack shelf. Bigot filter, screen out the fat phobes with your body. Decreased mortality, better cancer survival rates. Strong, more tattoo space. Stronger bones, less at risk of osteoporosis. Soft and cozy. So, it's not all shit. I think fatness is fabulous. You know what one that I love? There's a phrase. It's from a poem. Made of waves and honey. Made of waves and honey. I think about thin bodies, and I think about, the horizon. It's a straight line. Just like, maybe thin bodies have more straight lines. And that's a part of nature. And then waves hitting the shore. So curves and honey dripping down. It's beautiful. Isn't that visually interesting? And the mountains, some jagged edges, and, meadows and hills that may be softer. And that, for me, that waves and honey is just so beautiful. And when I see my back rolls, that's what I'm thinking. I'm just like, oh, it's so nice. Like that kind of, that fat coming down my back. Like I've got 2 rolls on each side of the back rolls. And I'm just like, it's just like if my back was made of honey and it was just dripping down. That's what I wish for everyone listening, is that they can see, the world in their body and see it's just part of human existence to be the way that we are. All right, so end of the episode. That was the last question. Great question to end on. If you appreciate this episode and would like to support Fat Liberation, go to Ko-fi and choose a level that feels good to you, and you'll get some free stuff. I'm feeling really zen after that, thinking about the waves and honey. And if you ever have any questions, feel free to email me or send me a message on Instagram, and my assistant will check them out. And I hope you have a wonderful fat positive rest of your day. And I'll see you in a while, alligator. Stay fierce, fatty. Goodbye.